Don't give up, you know it's true. You gotta do what you wanna do.
Hello, welcome to UPSC Gangsters. This is Arjun Aryan, and I'll be taking you through the business and economics related news from the Hindu newspaper for the date 25th September 2017. So let's start. The first news piece heading says Mangalore Chemicals to invest rupees 1000 crores to set up rupees 600 crore facility for making 7 lakh tons of phosphatics, spent almost rupees 400 crores on ammonia urea plants. So this is the heading. So let's get on with the first point. Mangalore Chemicals and Fertilizers, a subsidiary of Zawri Fertilizers and Chemicals, an advanced group company, plans to invest rupees 1000 crores over the next 3 years to set up a brownfield facility in Mangaluru and improve energy efficiency, Suresh Krishnan, managing director, said in an interview. So, we needn't read the entire news piece from this. I'll just get to one point from this entire news that is really important. Brownfield facility. Alright, so brownfield facility is mentioned. You need to know about what a brownfield facility is. Previously, we saw what a greenfield facility was. Right, so using greenfield facility was supposed to be a project on a building or a facility that is already there, and you are not making any sort of changes or renovations to it. Alright, you're just occupying the same place, alright, without doing any demolition or alterations to that building. So that is supposed to be a brownfield project, greenfield project, sorry. So brownfield project, alright, so the projects on the unused lands where there is no need to remodel or demolish an existing structure. Alright, so that would be greenfield. But brownfield, the projects which are modified and upgraded are called brownfield projects. Alright, so that is the difference between greenfield and a brownfield project. So under brownfield project, they are modified. The building is modified and upgraded. Alright, so they are called brownfield projects. Next news piece. Alright, let's get to the next news piece. The heading says intervention rethinking needed to stir demand. Subheading: Center states should step up capital spending in this fiscal. Let's get to the first point. Economic growth in India has weathered the global tailwinds over the last few years, and the economy is well equipped to move to a higher growth trajectory in the near future. So, this is the first point, so it is self-explanatory. I'll get to the second point straight away. However, subdued growth in the last few months, coupled with the slowdown in exports, perhaps calls for some intervention and rethinking to push investments and demand in the economy. One of the critical contributions made by the government to economic growth comes from its capital spending on areas such as roads, railways, irrigation projects, affordable housing, and building other productive assets. So this is kind of important. So first, in this point, it says coupled with the slowdown in exports, perhaps calls for some intervention and rethinking to push investments and demands in the economy. So they are saying basically we should concentrate more on investments, alright, and rethink our plan because the economy is currently slowing down, right? So the growth is actually kind of slowing down right now, and he says we have to have an intervention, and rethinking has to be done so as to attract investments and stir economic activity. So the one major thing that actually helps in stirring economic activity or instigating economic growth is public investments. Alright, so public investments and capital spending from the government will increase or will speed up the economic growth. Alright, it will start the economic growth because when you're like building infrastructure, it helps the people to gain better access to whatever they are doing. For example, if you take the Delhi metro or any sort of metro that comes to a city, you know how helpful it is to people traveling to long distances and all that. So it reduces the travel time, and it actually kind of brings long distances to the vicinity of the travelers. Alright, so it becomes easier. So the more they travel, the more time they're able to save, the more productive they are. So metro coming to a city will actually increase the city's GDP and all. Alright, so the economic growth actually starts from there. So there is a boost in economic activity. A lot of people moving to different places for work and all. Alright, so work would be the major use of metro, right? So people who are working take the metro often. So when they use the metro for their work, they are able to get to their place earlier, right, on time. So work gets done, and a lot of work is also being done. So therefore this will stir economic activity. So same way, capital spending has to be done in places like in sectors like roads, railways, education, products, affordable housing and all that. So when you do something like this will actually boost the economic growth of our economy. Alright, so let's get to the second point. These tend to have a multiplier effect on economic growth, as higher spending on projects creates jobs, which further creates greater demand for goods and services in the economy. So I'll stop here in this point. So this is basic economics. Alright, so when you invest, so the economic activity begins to grow. So as the economic activity begins to grow, they create jobs. Alright, so jobs get created, and because of jobs getting created, you get a lot of money in the people's hand too. Alright, so when a lot of money is available at the people's at individuals disposal, so that would also create demand, because they want to buy more. So when the demand actually increases, obviously the supply has to keep up, and that is how the economy actually comes alive once again. Alright, so the work actually starts from there. Alright, so continuing with the point, in many cases we find that the finances are not a problem. Implementation bottlenecks need to be addressed. For example, the National Infrastructure Investment Fund has sufficient funds to take over sound assets that are stranded due to paucity of funds. Alright, so this point is important. What they are saying is there is no lack of funds. Alright, it's just the way of implementation that is a kind of problem in India. But we have created a corpus with the name under the name National Infrastructure Investment Fund. So what is a National Infrastructure Investment Fund? So I'll tell you that. So it is actually a fund basically, alright, so that is created for mainly funding the infrastructure projects. Alright, so the total corpus of the fund is going to be 40,000 crores. In that, the government will invest around 22,000 crores, and the private sector is expected to invest another 20,000. This private sector is expected to, through their firms and companies, they are expected to invest another 50% in that corpus amount. Alright, the government's 20,000 crores will come in the form of the budget. Alright, so the government's stake in this is going to be 49%. In NIIF, the government stake is going to be 49%, and the remaining majority stake, that is the 51%, is going to stay with the private fund. So as to give an impression that the private people also have a big say in the fund. Alright, so this is mainly for infrastructure projects, and the objective of NIIF is to maximize economic impact through infrastructure development in viable projects, both greenfield and brownfield. Alright, including stalled projects mainly in the core infrastructure sector. So this is about funding the infrastructure projects mainly in greenfield, including greenfield and brownfield. And the most important point is it also includes funding stalled projects mainly in the core infrastructure sector. So this is how NIIF is going to be useful. Alright, so let's get to the next point. The subheading says special infra bonds. Alright, special infra bonds. So under that, the other option that the government could explore is to issue special bonds for large infrastructure spends in railways and other projects in roads and highways, bridges, to name a few. So this point, issuing special bonds, alright, just like how USA issued the war bond during the World War II period, alright, because they didn't have enough funds to start massive production for the war effort. The government actually released a war bond, alright, so people will pay and they will get monthly interest out of it. Alright, so the similar way, he has suggested that India also use the similar way of introducing special bonds for large infrastructure projects in railways and other projects. So if the new bullet train project is gonna come right between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, so they could this is a large infrastructure project obviously, so it is costing really high, so you can actually use something like the special bonds, issue special bonds for such huge projects so that you have enough funds with you at disposal. Alright, next point, the recent PPP option announced for low cost housing is innovative as it targets issues in risk allocation. Similar models can be offered to other infrastructure sectors where private investments can come in. PPP, I told you, PPP is public-private partnership. So that was announced for low-cost housing. Alright, so this risk allocation thing has been sorted out in PPP option. Alright, because both the government and the private sector is kind of bearing the risk. Alright, so similar models can be used for this. The NIIF is already something like that. Alright, it's already like PPP, but it is a fund. Alright, what they are saying here is they should do this PPP for separate projects, not a fund or a corpus. There should be kind of understanding or kind of cooperation between the government and the private companies, alright, for a specific project. Alright, that is the suggestion in this point. The next point, clauses on renegotiation and grievance redressal need to be included in such policies, as absence of these have stranded several projects in the past. This is a very important point. These are the two main reasons, alright, that has led to projects being delayed or projects being abandoned. So the clauses on renegotiation, alright, renegotiation and grievance redressal. So grievance redressal, these were not there in other policies, it seems, alright, in the policies that are currently going on. So if these two are there, things will be sorted out easily and the project will happen and the project will get completed on time. So that is what the suggestion is. So these are the two important points in that. Alright, so let's get to the next point. In the current year, capital expenditure of not only the central government but also the state governments should be stepped up. Even if this leads to some breach in the fiscal consolidation target, this may be relaxed for a year as suggested by the FRBM Act for exceptional circumstances. So basically this point is pretty straight. They want central government and the state government to invest in such public asset projects and infrastructure projects to create economic growth. So even if the deficit is going to go high, and even if they're not going to comply with the FRBM Act. So it stands for Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Alright, according to that, you are supposed to keep your deficit under a certain minimum level, alright, a certain maximum level. So even if it means that you have to breach that said target, he says that it is kind of worth it because we need it right now to stir economic growth. Alright, so next point, next subheading, trimming bank holdings. So under that, I'll go to the point straight away. One area of concern that needs immediate attention is to do with bank recapitalization. This has become even more imminent given the stress caused by NPAs, the non-performing assets. The government can look at raising this capital without putting pressure on the balance sheet by trimming its large holdings in these banks. So, according to this point, we come to know that the banks are also facing some financial strain, and the government needn't do anything extra like issuing bonds or divesting in some company. That the government needn't do. The government already has large holdings in these big banks, alright? So if they are kind of using those large holdings to recapitalize the bank, that itself is enough according to this guy, alright? So that itself will be enough to save the banks. Next point, this will enable the banks to restore their financial health and provide an opportunity to the retail capital market. Alright, so this is pretty straight. This is gonna restore the financial health and they will be able to handle the retail capital market well. Alright, next point, the government has also been concerned about a slowdown in job creation. While growth revival through public spending will itself create jobs, especially in the construction sector, it is also necessary to focus on the labor-intensive sectors. It is time to recast labor laws and allow fixed-term employment contracts, ensuring more flexibility. So here, while you're doing public investments, right, when you're actually investing in infrastructure projects, that itself is going to create jobs. That is the important point here. So when you're doing these investments, a lot of people will be employed, a lot of engineers and all that is going to be employed, a lot of labor will also happen. But separately, he's saying that you have to invest in those projects that is labor intensive. Alright, so labor intensive projects will actually kind of employ more people, right? So for that you have to make the contracts more flexible. So if the labor contracts are more flexible, and there'll be a lot of businesses that would come and invest in and work towards the project. Alright, so that is the point here. The next point, the government's recent initiative on setting minimum wages is a move in the opposite direction and should be reconsidered. He is saying if the minimum wages have been set, minimum wages are a fixed value by the government below which an employer should not be giving the salary to the employee, meaning above the fixed salary line the employer can give, alright, but below the said set value or the set target by the government, below that you shouldn't be giving the employee the salary, alright. So there has to be a minimum wage. The employee has to receive a minimum salary definitely, and it shouldn't go below that. If it goes below that, the government will crack down on that agency that is not providing the proper salary according to the minimum wage that has been announced by the government. Alright, so if that is not happening, the company will be in trouble. So he's saying this is actually something, an initiative that has taken the growth to the opposite direction, because the companies will not be willing to invest more and employ more people according to the laws, alright, because of the minimum wage. So this would be discouraging the companies to employ more people from India. That's what he's saying. Next point, to quickly restore confidence among businesses, the government needs to resolve issues related to GST, especially from the small and medium sector. You know what the current problem that is going on, right? The GST credit, the tax credit that is supposed to come back to the exporters and the businesses. So he's saying that should be expedited and that should mend quickly. So that is also putting a strain on economic growth. So if the credit happens, that credit amount is going to be used for the business rotation by the businesses, right? So if that is stuck, it is kind of hard for these people to carry on the business. So he's saying that also should take place very soon to restore confidence in the business houses. So next point, a clear and simple framework needs to be defined and instituted for claiming input tax credit Problems faced by exporters, such as withdrawal of duty drawback benefit, need to be addressed immediately. In the near to medium term, reducing the number of rates under GST and expanding its coverage to include electricity, oil and gas, alcohol and real estate at the earliest should be a priority. So this is another important point she's saying. The previous point is like the thing that is going on right now. It has been going on for the past 1 week to 10 days. Alright, so he's saying immediately whatever credits that have been stalled has to be released immediately, alright, to maintain the economic health of the nation. Next point, what he's saying is the GST's coverage should be expanded. It should include, the GST should also include electricity, oil and gas, alcohol and real estate too under it. Alright, so when that happens, GST will have a much broader base. Alright, that's what he's saying. Next point, the country has been fortunate to have 2 successive years of normal monsoon and good agricultural production. There is need to catalyze FDI in organized food retail, which can create a supply chain transformation and strengthen the linkages between farmers and markets. This is an important point, but what I have to say about the food industry. Alright, the food industry is something we need to tap in, something which we have failed to tap in. Alright, and food industry is the biggest industry in the world. Alright, and next to, it is having the pharma industry and the arms and ammunition industry, which is on the 3rd and 4th place and all. Alright, and the biggest industry is supposed to be the food industry, and we haven't capitalized yet. So he's saying there has already been 2 good monsoons in our nation, so we have to catalyze FDI, foreign direct investment. Alright, so when foreign direct investment comes to the agricultural sector, it would be the reach of the agricultural sector to international market would be broadened. Alright, so there will be linkages that are existing between the farmers and markets, and the farmers can also benefit from one end, and the agricultural contribution towards GDP can also increase. Alright, which is supposed to increase when it is a fact that majority of the population is dependent either directly or indirectly on agriculture. Right, so let's get to the next point. The RBI also needs to play a role in providing support to the economy. For one, it needs to place some priority on growth while deciding on monetary policy. So RBI actually decides the monetary policy with its repo rates and the bank rates and all, right? So it has to take into account the country has to go through an economic growth, revival of economic growth right now, and according to that they have to frame their policies, monetary policies. Having switched to an inflation targeting regime, the Monetary Policy Committee seems to be ignoring the weak growth trends while setting interest rates. Alright, this is important. Now the RBI has inflation targets. Alright, so instead of growth targets they have inflation targets, and when you're targeting on inflation targets, it's just about the rise, alright, the rise in costs. So when you're concentrating only on that, it is it is possible for you to ignore whether the actual growth is happening in an economy or not, right? Inflation might be of different factors, because of different factors, various factors, and when inflation you're targeting, you'll only try to keep the prices low. So to control the inflation, what the RBI will do, it will take back the money from the economy. Alright, it will cut down money from the economy, meaning it will reduce the amount of money that is available with the people. So the demand will go down. So when the demand goes down, obviously the supply would also go down and the price comes down and all. Alright, but supply is going down, which means that employment will also go down. So when you're targeting inflation, this would also happen. Alright, so when we are going through a slow growth phase right now, we have to make sure that we do not actually get blinded by inflation targets alone. So we have to stick to the economic growth of a nation. So when you're sticking to the economic growth of the nation, and you have the target of an economic growth or target of the GDP increasing per annum, so that would actually work out as of now. Alright, so we have to keep the growth trends in mind. So next point, the policy repo rate of 6% seems excessively high for an economy that is facing recessionary pressure. Yes, so he's saying 6% is kind of high. We are going into recession right now. Alright, not the kind of bad recession that the USA and all faced some 5-6 years back. When the GDP growth actually falls back, the very term is known as recession. Alright, so it is receding back, and during such recessionary pressure, it is not good on the part of RBI to increase the repo rate. So when the repo rate increases, like I've said, when the repo rate is increased, what would happen? This repo rate is actually the kind of interest rate that is charged to the commercial banks for getting loans from RBI. So when the interest rate is high, the money with the other commercial banks will reduce. So they will disperse lesser loans to the population. So lesser loans to the population means lesser money in hand. So lesser money in hand would mean lesser spending. So you know what happens. Then demand goes down, then everything, as a reactionary trend, the economic activity also goes down. So which is not needed as of now, alright, because they are already slowing down, and this is not something the RBI should be letting out, alright. The RBI could outline a plan of cutting interest rates over a period of time. So next point, further, the exporters should have access to easily available credit. So easy loans should be available to the exporters. This is another important point which can stir economic activity. Next point, this can be done by expanding interest rate subvention from the current rate to 4% and allowing commercial banks to lend more to small and medium enterprise exporters, or tweaking working capital norms. Alright, so he is basically suggesting we have to reduce from 6% to 4%. Alright, and allow commercial banks to lend more to small and medium enterprises. So when small and medium enterprises get more loans, they export more. Alright, so this would actually, all these points would actually stir and put the company back on the economic growth path. Alright, so this is what the entire news piece was for. A pretty important economics news related news piece. Let's go to the next one. Next one is a small news piece again. Heading says, Tata Motors to cut platforms. Move aimed at boosting efficiency, customer satisfaction and cost benefits. Alright, so the first point, the AMP will allow Tata Motors to share parts and production facilities between a new range of cars. This sharing will reduce costs and allow the automaker to price its products competitively, while also giving car buyers a range of new features. So what is this AMP? Alright, AMP is Advanced Modular Platform. This is the only important point in this, alright, in this news piece, so that's why I'm saying this. The AMP is actually an advanced modular platform which is used by Tata, or they have introduced it. So this will allow Tata Motors to share parts and production facilities between a new range of cars, meaning same spare parts and same production techniques for different kinds of cars. Alright, so this will reduce costs. Alright, and while the costs are reduced, this would make for high competitivity. Alright, so they'll be able to compete properly with other cars in the market, much more cheaper cars they'll be able to produce, because the spare parts and everything are almost the same. Alright, so this is the point from this news piece. Let's go to the next one. India, South Korea to upgrade FTA at earliest. FTA means Free Trade Agreement. Alright, so India and South Korea to upgrade FTA at earliest. Subheading for it, New Delhi wants its English yoga teachers to get opportunities to offer services. Let's get to the point straight away. Even as this India-South Korea free trade agreement will be expanded soon to boost bilateral trade and investment, New Delhi has voiced concerns about the low utilization of the FTA by India due to the complicated provisions in the pact as well as South Korea's regulations. Alright, so we're gonna upgrade the FTA agreement, take it to a new level, but still we have some sort of concerns about it. We need some sort of arrangements or tweaking to be done to the agreement. Next point. According to official sources, the recent bilateral talks in Seoul saw India cite the difficulties being faced by its English teachers in getting permission to teach in South Korea. Though, going by the FTA, Indian English language teachers should be getting opportunities to teach in primary and secondary schools in South Korea. This is not being implemented effectively in practice. This is because English program in Korea, the EPIK, note this down. This is a kind of an issue between us and Korea for business purposes. Alright, so EPIK is English program in Korea. Stipulates that those eligible to teach English in South Korea must be a citizen of a country where English is the primary language. Alright, so this is the stipulation. The English teachers who are coming to South Korea must be from a country that has English as the primary language. Alright, and in India we don't have a national language. The official language is supposed to be English, but still we are not allowed. So next para, heading says South Africa example. Let's get to the point. The EPIK specifies that EPIK teachers must be citizens of one of the following countries: Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, UK, US or South Africa. India has now asked that it be included in the EPIK country list by pointing out that South Africa has on the list though. South Africa was on the list though. That country has 11 official languages including Afrikaans, and English was only one of them. Alright, so I'll repeat the point. South Africa was on the list though. That country has 11 official languages including Afrikaans, and English was only one of them. So according to this, they are saying South Africa should never be in the list because they have 11 official languages, already including the native languages and all, and English is just a part of them. So something very similar to India. When they are allowed, we are also supposed to be allowed. That's what they are saying. Next point. India is also keen on sending its yoga teachers. So India is also keen on sending its yoga teachers for short-term work in the country, while Seoul has stated their services may not be needed since many Koreans are now learning yoga in India and returning to teach it in South Korea. Alright, so many people, citizens from Korea, are coming to India to learn yoga, and they are getting back to South Korea and teaching them. So yoga is not gonna work well, alright, for India, because that is what we were banking on, to send yoga teachers there, but they are saying we have sufficient Korean yoga teachers already. Alright, but of course, yeah, the English teacher thingy, that still stands. Next point. On the good side, India is keen that norms are eased to upgrade the FTA in a way that Indian goods get greater market access. Repeat. On the good side, India is keen that norms are eased to upgrade the FTA in a way that Indian goods get greater market access. So, they want India's access to South Korea's market to be easier, to trade easier. Alright, so norms should be relaxed, they are saying. Next point. Since the implementation of the FTA in 2010, India's trade deficit with South Korea has increased from $5 billion to more than $8 billion. Alright, so our deficit with South Korea. So what is the trade deficit? Trade deficit actually means, the import minus export we do with that country. Alright, so it seems that we are kind of importing more than we are exporting to the country. So therefore, the trade deficit. So it has been $10 billion back then, and now it is $8 billion, which is rising. So they want the norms to be eased so that India can trade properly with them. Next point, to ensure greater market access for Indian products, India is seeking a set of mutually accredited bodies for export inspection. So for greater market access for Indian products, they want some